So how can this help in terms of wearable technology? And I think this is the really big piece as to certainly what we'll hear from Coach in a minute with regards to the interpretation of it and working with coaches. We're here to try and quantify how much and what intensity has the athlete completed their work at, and then potentially identify strengths and opportunities for physical improvement, because every athlete is going to be different, but how we can utilize this to drive performance is going to be really critical. And inevitably, as a result of that, by driving performance, we absolutely want to try and reduce injuries from occurring, but also understanding what we're trying to prepare for, whether it's in practice or in game demands. And effectively, as you'll see by that last point, just taking a more scientific approach towards what we're doing. So that is it for me. I'm now going to hand it over to Coach Phil, and he's going to go through some of the application in his environment with Boston College. So thanks very much, Coach, for joining us today.
So, like I said, we have a great partnership with Catapult. We now have roughly 55 plus units available for our team and our roster. So that allows us to take care of our two deep and then a ton of our special teams players and then athletes we want to track. So what are we doing? Obviously using Catapult. How are we doing it? We're going to break that down here in a second, but why is what you're going to really find out here in a short why of how we apply this. So here's how we do it, right? This is our summer template. And what you're looking at is plot lines, right? Where our skill players, we're actually going to hit some goals in the red, and then our actual result there in the tan color. So what we're trying to do is work backwards from preseason camp, training camp, and obviously you got three areas here. This is on the left. You have June, and right there at that break, you have July 4th break. And then that section there in the middle is roughly the remainder of July. We give our players about 7 days away at home to rest, rejuvenate, and get their mind right before training camp. And those were our estimated goals to hit in training camp like we did the year prior. So that's kind of how we kind of design it, holistically looking at the big picture. How do we start, right? That's the biggest piece. We're going to dive into this. It has to start with your coaches. So that's your full strength staff, that's your position coaches. Everyone kind of has to be aligned in a sense. You have to have that meeting at the beginning of the year. This is what Catapult is. This is what we're looking to get out of it. And this is how we're going to ensure best practices on a daily basis. So it's got to start with the coaches. Next, here's what we're tracking. And we have the luxury. We have two of us working on Catapult. We have one assistant strength coach right now that runs and heads all of our data collection and breakdown. So what are we tracking? We're tracking everything. High speed distance above 12 miles an hour, our D cells, A cells, efforts above 80%, max velocity. We're actually looking at percentage of max velocity per player because that's going to be a huge piece when you're looking at wide receivers versus offensive linemen versus your running backs, total distance, IMAs. But the biggest thing is that what we're tracking, you have to have a plan and you have to prepare best you can and getting everybody aligned before you hit the field. So next is just a sample of what it kind of looks like, how we program design. And this is just a very early, as you can see, January 18, 2022. We spent about 42 minutes out on the turf. We did a 20-yard full dynamic warm-up. We didn't do any plyometrics. We started to integrate some short area space sprinting. We did 2 sets of 6 20-yard sprints at 75%. And then low-level aerobic conditioning. We did 4 perimeters, jog, walk, just to get some volume on our legs. And you can see how the player loads and distance acquired kind of results there on the left. So, you know, our DBs we're looking at right there, like Bug Jones, that was 231 player load for him, roughly 5.7 player load per minute. not a ton of IMAs. And then for some reason, his total distance didn't track that day. But as you can see, most of them were around 28 to 3,000 yards. So looking on the right, this is how we really individualize for our guys come season. You got two premier guys right there. And what we do is we try and look at Tuesdays and compare Tuesdays to Tuesdays, Wednesdays to Wednesdays, and Thursdays to Thursdays, because as we know, great coaches have great game plans and they tend to stick to those on each of those days. So, Thursday probably ends up being a mix between your third down, your red zones. Tuesdays you're looking at first and second down. Wednesdays you start looking at third down, and Wednesday, you look at third down, and then Thursdays is the third down red zone, and then everything else that you need to polish up on for that Friday walkthrough. So